Recording in progress.
A very good evening to our special guests and to all the talented participants presented here today. I'm delighted to welcome you all to Day 3 of Road to INSL 2021, which is conducted under the topic Learn How to Pitch. Innovation Nation Sri Lanka is a volunteer-led initiative by the IEEE Sri Lanka section with the ultimate purpose to train, mentor, and financially support the aspiring entrepreneurs in order to inspire innovation and entrepreneurship amongst the Sri Lankan youth. The Road to INSL is a 4-day training program setting off the entrepreneurial spark in a young person or nourishing the competitiveness inside those who are already determined of becoming entrepreneurs. The series of workshops upskill the applicants with all the basic techniques from finding an investable and innovative idea to implement it in the real world. To welcome the gathering for Day 3 of INSL 2021, let me invite the publicity team lead of IEEE Innovation Nation Sri Lanka 2021, Mr. Chanaka Wickramasinghe. Mr. Chanaka, over to you.
Thank you, Winnie. First of all, good evening to everyone present here. I'm very honored to welcome you for the Day 3 of Road to INSL program. Hope you made a use of our previous sessions as today as well. And today we have Mr. Mafaz Ifan as our guest speaker, and he'll be conducting the session to you on learn how to create a pitch deck and how to pitch your idea. Also, we have with us Mr. Mafaz, Mr. Dhammika Marasinghe, the section students activity chair for IEEE Sri Lanka section. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And finally, I welcome all of our participants for this insightful session. Without further delay, I would let you experience the session. Hope it would be an informative and valuable session for all of you. Once again, welcome you for Day 3 of Road to INSL program. Hope you learn a lot from here to make your idea a reality. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chanaka. Our speaker for the day is a well-experienced individual who is an entrepreneur, marketer, and a Toastmaster. Thank you, sir, for sparing a bit of your valuable time for us. He has graciously agreed to impart with us the wisdom he has gathered over the years. We hope that this will aid you to develop your own journey of entrepreneurship. But before I invite the speaker onto this virtual stage, I would like to make a quick announcement to all the participants. If you have any questions throughout the session, please post them on the link provided in the chat box. Our guest speaker will answer your questions at the end of today's workshop. With that being said, let me introduce to you our guest speaker of the day. He is none other than Mr. Mafaz Ifan, co-founder and chief storyteller at Show and Tell Private Limited. Please welcome Mr. Mafaz Ifan with a virtual round of applause on the spotlight. Mr. Mafaz, the spotlight is all yours to set off the energy and enthusiasm in those who are already dreaming of becoming entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Winnie. Let me just give me a second to set my screen on. Hold on. Yeah, I hope all of you can see and hear me.
Yes, sir.
And I hope you can also see my slides, right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so good evening, everyone. And first of all, congratulations for being here today. I think anyone who is aspiring, who is already doing a startup of their own, deserves a huge round of applause because you guys are the people who are building Sri Lanka's future, right? So kudos to all of y'all. And for sure, being a startup founder or even dreaming about being a startup is not something that everybody does. So you are in a very special caliber, in a very special group already. So this is just a journey of learning, continuous learning and continuous improvement. So let me introduce myself a little bit more than what Uvini did. So like you heard, my name is Mafaz, and I am the co-founder of a presentation strategy, design and training agency. So I and my team, we help companies and startups tell their stories in a more effective manner, right? And those stories help them, whether they are trying to raise funding, whether they are trying to make a sale, or whether they are just trying to sell their company or just promote their business, right? So over the last 5 years, I have had the privilege of working with startups and companies in Sri Lanka, as well as in the United States and in UK. And I've worked on over 25 pitch decks, and totally all these companies together were trying to raise upwards of $95 million, right? So all of these projects have taught me a lot about what startups should be saying and what investors are wanting to hear in order to make that decision, whether to back the startup or to let it, to move on to the next opportunity. So this is, in today's session, the next 1.5 hours, I'm going to try and share with you as much of those learnings that I have got. And hopefully that can give you all an advantage when you all go in front of investors or judges, or anyone who's trying to basically evaluate whether your startup has potential, right? So this is the foundation on which I'm building this entire program. So today we'll be covering 3 main things, right? We're going to understand the startup mindset, or the investor's mindset. So this is basically looking at what do investors want to hear, how do we need to think about the investors. Then we'll look at what we are going to put into our pitch deck, which is probably the most important part of the session today. And finally, how do we deliver a really good presentation when we have a chance in front of an investor, in front of judges, or in front of some other organization. So with that, let's jump straight in and look at what investors are looking for, understanding what's in their mind. So investors are people, right? At the end of the day, they're all people, and they are looking for the best opportunities where they can invest their money and get the best return. So a few things that we have to understand when we are pitching to an investor is that pitching is a story, right? It's about telling the story of your startup, right? From where it came, from where the idea was born, all the way to where you see it's going to be in the future. So this story is what we are trying to communicate, and the more effective we are when we tell this story, you're going to find that people want to support you, they want to back you, they want to find ways for you to be successful, right? So it's all about telling a story. Now, one thing that when you're telling the story, you need to be careful about is to not fall in love with your solution, right? But instead fall in love with your problem. The reason for this is a lot of startups begin with a very simple idea or very small idea, but with a very big technological angle, right? We are going to be AI, we are going to be Bitcoin, we are going to be cryptocurrency, we are going to have blockchain. All of these buzzwords are in their head, and the founding team wants to do a lot of those things, which is great. But sometimes all of those things are not needed in order to make your business successful or to make your startup successful. Now, as an investor wants to know that you're not just a tech play, right? You're not just a company that's going to come in there, play with the latest technology, and tomorrow when the technology changes, your business is going to be obsolete, right? An investor doesn't want to invest in those businesses because those businesses have a very short lifespan. An investor wants to see a founding team, a founder who has a passion for a problem, right? Who, whether it, middle of the night will get out of bed and jump on his computer or jump on her computer to do research to see if a particular problem can be solved in a certain way, right? So finding the solution to a problem is what we want to showcase, because technology changes and you need to be able to change with technology, but the problem that you're trying to solve might not change, right? So you want to continuously keep pushing yourself to find better and better ways to solve this problem. So this problem is one of the most important. One thing I would say to any startup is, don't fall in love with your technology. Your technology is only a means to an end, right? What you're really working on is your problem. And when you're making a pitch and when you're trying to get in front of investors or judges or into an accelerator program or an incubation program, it's important to understand who are the people on the other side of your screen or in the audience who are judging you, right? Now, even judges, even for something like Innovation Nation Sri Lanka, you're going to have people judging your startup. But even these judges are going to be evaluating your startup through the lens of an investor, right? They want to select the most investable startups or ideas that have the highest potential to be successful, right? So this is ultimately the game, right? You might have the best technology, but you might not be investable because your idea is too complicated, right? So this is where the business, you have to be smart as a startup founder. Where do you put your focus? Now, when you're looking at investment, especially outside, you're looking for individuals to invest in your company or venture capital organizations to invest in your company. Don't think of them as like a bank where you can go whenever you want, collect money, they will give you money without any questions, right? And that would be the ideal dream, but that never happens. Right? Your investment, when you go in front of an investor, you want them to see through your startup that you can give them an opportunity where their money can grow your business, right? Where it can help, that the money that they give you will help you make a bigger impact in the market. So that's the first thing that you want to showcase. That's the first thing they look for when they're selecting, deciding whether your startup is investable or not. The second thing they're looking for is, could their knowledge, their experience help you grow the business or get an advantage in the business, right? So maybe they are in the industry already, or maybe they have other investments that are in that industry, and they can those collaborations could make a huge impact, right? So they are going to be looking at this. Is there something that I can bring to the table other than just money? They're also going to be looking at, okay, where can their experience help build the business, right? If they are very technically competent investors, but you need somebody to help with your business development, they might not see the correct match, right? And you also should be mindful of what you are looking for from an investor. And finally, an investor will always invest in the business that he or she believes has the highest potential for a reliable return, right? So even though, sometimes we come up with the idea and we realize this solution is needed by every single person in this earth, right? 7.2 billion people, everyone needs it. But for you to get that 7.12 billion people, there might be a long journey. And an investor might not be willing to wait that long journey. So at the end of the day, the investor is a person. He's putting his or her hard-earned money onto a table and is expecting something back. Right? So be mindful of this. So when you're putting your pitch deck together, you need to be thinking about, how do we put all this content? How do we create content that's going to reassure, that's going to make the investor feel, these guys are the most likely to be successful. They are the ones who are going to be most likely to get me a good return on my investment. And they are the guys who I can make a huge impact and help them grow over the years to come. Right? So this is what we are trying to do in a pitch deck also. So the question is, what do you put into the pitch deck? And this question changes. What the content in your pitch deck changes over the course of your startup life. Right? So when you're at an early stage, when you're just started out, you're going to be talking about things like your team, the potential market, the problem that you're solving, and how you're solving it. And most of you are probably at this stage. So this is what you're going to be looking at. But then as your business grows, as you get customers using your product, giving you feedback, and you're going in for second or third rounds of investment, what investors start looking for is slightly different. They now want to see how successful have you been? Have you been able to solve the business problems that the company has? You have a way to solve these problems, right? Are your customers buying your products? So the story changes a little bit. But one thing that always remains fairly consistent is the team, right? At any point, most investors will tell you, we don't invest in the idea, we don't invest in the startup, we invest in the people, right? And I know of investors who have walked away from good investments, right? Simply because they didn't feel a connection. They didn't see that, okay, they could connect and work with the founder, right? So these things happen, right? So when you are pitching, when you're presenting yourself at that meeting, you're talking to your investor, you need to make sure that you show the investor that you're driven, that you're passionate, that you're going to, no matter what problems come, you will always try to find a solution, right? You're not going to stop until this problem that you have identified is solved. That is something that investors want to see, right? They want to see that you're coachable, right? That you're taking feedback, that you're willing to accept their input, you're listening to them, and you're discussing things, and you're trying to see what is the best thing for the business and what is going to help the business become successful. They're looking for domain knowledge, right? Do you know what you're getting into? And what skills you have, and more importantly, what skills you don't have, right? So as a startup, you're not going to have everything, right? You might be, you and your core team might be great technical guys, right? You all might be engineers who can code through the night. There isn't a problem that you all can't solve with code, but you all don't have the business side of things. You all don't know how to go and make a sale. You all don't know how to go and manage a team. Right? So understanding those problems, understanding where your weaknesses are, is also important, because then only you can go and have a fair discussion and see what do I need to become successful, right? And what do I have already that will help us on that journey. So the team is one of the most important assets, right? And you need to be very careful with the team. And just as a final note, there are a lot of startups who think our job is to keep going for competitions, to keep going to accelerators, to keep getting to keep going after raising funding, right? And the CEO that's the CEO's job. The main founder or the co-founder's main person's job is just getting money. But if you want your business to be really successful, if you want investors to come to you and say, listen, I want to invest in your business, you need to get something else right. You need to be chasing after customers, right? Because investors will only give you money, they will give you their time, but customers give you something much more valuable. They give you validation and they give you feedback, right? So even if it is getting one customer or two customers, just go for it, right? Get the customer. It's better than just chasing after funding over and over again, right? So it's important as startups that you're also, when you're planning your product, when you're planning your business, plan to get to market fast, right? Don't wait until the product is perfect, where everything is done, all the features are implemented. Decide what is the first few features that are most needed by your customer. Develop those and put the product into the market. There's a very nice saying in the startup culture where we say, if you're not embarrassed by the very first version of your product, that means you have taken too long to get to market. Right? So you need to be embarrassed. Customers need to feel like, that this is not perfect, but you need to make it as perfect as possible within those few features, right? Get the customers giving you feedback. See, are they buying your product? What are they saying? What's the comments that they're putting? This is what should be driving your business, right? This is information you might not get from an investor, right? So this is where one of the most important points, don't chase after investors, chase after customers. So when you have all of these things going in, this is what you need to keep in mind when you're working on your pitch deck, right? This is what you're trying to say to the investor. I know what you want to see. I know how to make you feel confident about my startup. I know what I need to do to make my startup successful. With that in mind, you're ready to start designing your pitch deck, right? So this is where we start jumping into the actual content of our slides. Now, sometimes we get confused between a pitch deck and a pitch, right? So just to clarify this, yeah. So pitch deck is a tool, right? When we pitch our idea, when we tell somebody about our idea, we are pitching, right? Whether it is to win investment, whether it is to win a customer, whether it's to get approval, to get a loan, whether it is to get included in an incubator or an accelerator, right? We are pitching. Pitching can happen anywhere. It can happen like in a restaurant, it can happen at a meeting, it can happen over dinner, right? It can happen anywhere. A pitch deck is a tool that we use to help us stay focused, right? So when you create a pitch deck, you know your pitch very well, right? That's going to help you stay focused. That's going to make sure that you stick to the point. The pitch is something complete, is the actual delivery, right? And you need to have both of these on point, right? Because you might be at a dinner and you have to pitch an investor, potential investor that you just met. You need to pitch them. You can't wait and, let me pull my laptop out, let me put that on the dinner table, and now with a restaurant full of people, I'm going to explain to make you do this presentation. That's not a luxury we might always have, right? So you need to be able to pitch your idea even without your presentation. But having a presentation helps you, or designing one helps you get your content in order, right? So this is the difference between a pitch deck and a pitch. Now, what do we put into a pitch deck? And this is where, like I said, pitching is all about telling a story. It's about the history of your startup all the way down to the future, or where your business is going to be going. And generally, you see about 10 key things that we put into a pitch deck, right? Depending on the program that you're in, if you're in Innovation Nation or some other program, they might want different things. But generally, these are typically what most incubators, most accelerators, most pitch competitions ask from their participants, right? So this is what we are going to cover today. And I'm going to go slide by slide and explain to you what should be on the slide and what you should be mindful of, what you should keep in mind when you're preparing that slide, right? So, and things what to avoid as well. So let's start with the cover slide. Now, the cover slide is something that we take for granted. We think, it's just, just going to be there. It needs to look pretty, but that's all that's important, right? But a cover slide is a really powerful tool. It's something that might get a lot of screen time. It might be on screen for a lot longer while your investor is ordering dinner or somebody's having a chat. It might just be there, right? So that is one slide that you will get a lot more time on. So putting a little bit of effort into this slide makes a big impact. So this slide, 3 things have to be there, right? Number 1, your startup logo, right? If you don't have a logo, just select a really cool looking font and make your name, the name of your business as a logo, right? Have your company name. If your logo is just an icon or something and the name is not there, include the name, and then have a elevator pitch or a vision statement. Right? I'll talk to you about what kind of vision statements you can create in the next slide. But it's good to have this one sentence that, in like one sentence, what does my startup do? Right? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to accomplish in our journey? That is a very powerful statement, and that needs a lot of thought, a lot of insight to prepare. Now, when you're creating your cover slide, a few things that you want to be mindful of, right? So number 1, keep it clean, keep it simple, keep it focused, right? Don't get carried away with trying to do too many things on your cover slide. Make sure that your name of your startup is in a prominent location, but don't let it overpower, right? So sometimes I've seen startups, the entire cover slide is just the slide, the logo, right? It's so big You're not trying to, you don't need to be that obvious, right? Just keep it neat, keep it classy, right? And somewhere very easy to see. And include that one-liner. Make sure that that one-liner captures the essence, right? This is what we are trying to do. That is what has to come across in this one-liner. And finally, keep it simple. This one-liner, keep it simple and keep it jargon-free. So many startups, we get a little insecure about our business, and we write this. We might be developing a mobile app, so we say a mobile application, and then what it does. But that looks so boring, right? Mobile applications. Everybody's developing mobile applications. So what do? We add one word here, one word there. A revolutionary mobile application, the best-in-class mobile application, the world's best application. Okay, you can make those statements if these are validated facts, right? Has your idea revolutionized the industry? Is it the world's best? Have you checked every single business, similar competitor in the world and checked whether it's the best? So don't try to exaggerate, right? You don't need to put makeup on your idea. Keep it simple, keep it direct, because the more clarity that you have, the more confidence it shows the investor or the judges about your business. Right? So now this one-liner is a very powerful thing. And I'm going to tell you 2 different techniques to write this one-liner. So the first technique is called the problem-centric technique, which is where we talk about the rational reason, what's the problem that our customers are trying to solve when they come to us. Okay? And that is that's our solution, right? We are trying to solve this problem for customers. The second approach is a frustration approach or emotional approach. This talks about what does this problem make our customers feel, and how can we take that feeling and get rid of it, right? Or how do we solve them not feeling that way? Right? Let me give 2 examples that might help clarify this a little bit, right? So imagine there's a startup that is building an e-commerce website that supplies baby products. Now, if it's a problem-based statement, they could say something very simple. They could simply something like, we are building an e-store where new parents can buy everything they need to take care of their infants. Very simple, very direct. If I read that, I know what is it that these guys do. This is an e-store, it's this, right? It's all very clear, right? But it's also very functional, very boring, right? It's like, okay, everyone's doing e-stores. What's exciting about it, right? Why does this e-store matter to you? What are you trying to accomplish? Why would customers care about your e-store versus another e-store? That question is a very powerful question, and we need to have a good answer. And that is where a frustration-led statement is a lot more powerful, right? So if you look at a frustration-led statement, you'll see something like the same business could say, we are helping parents feel prepared and ready to take care of their infants by equipping them with everything they need to be great parents. Now, this statement, I don't know. If a startup can have put this statement on screen, I would be like, okay, I don't know. Are they doing an e-commerce site? Are they doing a mobile app? Are they doing a van that is going to drive around with all these things? Or is it going to be a call center? I don't know any of that. But if I'm a parent, I would know what it feels like when you run out of diapers in the middle of the night and you need to go to the neighbor's house, or you need to go to your in-laws or your brothers or sisters' house to collect diapers. And you feel like, am I a bad parent for having forgotten to have this product? So you're selling this emotion, right? And that tells the investor, this person, this startup is trying to do something good for people, right? And even if they will start with the e-commerce site, but if that doesn't work, they'll do a mobile app. If the mobile app doesn't work, they'll do a call center. If the call center doesn't work, they will do a three-wheeler with all this stock in it. Right? Whatever it is, they will try to solve the problem. So this is a very powerful statement, and it creates an inquiry, creates a curiosity in the audience to listen to the rest of the presentation. Okay, you're trying to achieve something amazing. How are you trying to achieve this, right? So because of that, try to see how you can make this into a statement that captures the audience's attention. When I see somebody's raised their hand, is there a question? Vinny?
Hello, Mr. Mafaz. I have a quick announcement to the participants. If you have any questions, please drop them on the link provided in the chat. So, Mr. Mafaz, you can continue.
Sure, thank you. So I will tell the questions at the end then. Thank you, Vinny. Right. So these two approaches are very powerful. You can do either one, right? But if you do the second one, you're going to come off as a little higher class of startup than somebody who's just going with a problem statement, right? But it takes a bit of work. There's a technique. I'll give you a useful resource at the end of today's session that could help you get that frustration-led technique, how to get to it, right? So now, once your cover slide is done, I know how we spent a lot of time on the cover slide, but it's a very important slide, right? So now we're getting into the inside the other slides. So the first slide that you're going to always have is your problem or opportunity statement. Now the problem or opportunity statement is basically what it's going to prove the case for the existence or the need for your business or for your startup or for your idea, right? So here what you want to showcase is what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What are the pain areas, right? From a customer's point of view, what are the pain areas that you're trying to solve? Who has this problem, right? Who needs this problem solved? And how many people are there who are facing this issue, right? And these are the three things that you're trying to communicate. So you might have 1 or 2 slides for this, so that's okay. But these are the 3 things that you want to try and put across to the audience. Now, when you're preparing this slide, a few things that you try to achieve, right, is number 1, don't just come and say this is a problem. Try to put a number to it. Try to put a figure that would validate it. So, for example, you can talk about, let's say that you're trying to improve the bus route for people getting on a bus, right? You could talk about how much, you can say, you could come and simply say, people spend a lot of time at a bus stand waiting for the right bus. That's totally fine, right? It's a problem, it's a pain area, it's a frustration that we all face in Sri Lanka, right? But what if you could say, rather than just saying people are wasting time at the bus stand, you could say, on average, people spend 2 hours every month waiting for a bus, right? And this 2 hours is equal to X amount of rupees in lost productivity. You could that immediately validates, okay, is this problem big enough? Is it a big enough pain point for us to want a solution, right? So this is something that you try to achieve. Don't try to just come up with statements, but have 1 or 2 statements that are backed by financial or some kind of measurable metric, right? So this is something that's really powerful. So quantify your pain area. Second is have a very clear focus about your demographic or your audience. Now, what that means is when we build a startup, right, we have great plans, right? We want to be the world's best. We want to have customers from US, from Australia, from UK, from Antarctica, wherever, right? If they have money, we want them, right? But the problem with that is when you go and tell an investor, I want to get customers from all over the world, I want everyone to use my product. An investor is like, okay, this guy is a little confused. They don't know what they're getting into. So you want to be very specific. So like, for example, in that baby e-commerce website or the baby product e-commerce website, you could say that we are looking at our target audience is not just parents, but we're talking about parents who have new infants, so they are recent parents, right? Or they're parents with the first kid only, right? Whatever you want to try and quantify and qualify your target audience, right? So the more focus that you have, it shows the investor that you're not just chasing a white whale, but you know what you're going after. You know who needs your product. You know how you're going to get to them, and that creates a lot of confidence in them. And something to avoid is avoid the percentage rule. So sometimes we think, we don't have enough research, we don't have enough data in Sri Lanka sometimes about certain markets that we're getting into. And what we do is, we say there are 21 million people in Sri Lanka, and 50% of them own houses, right? Okay, so that means we have about 11 or maybe about just 10.5 million people in the country who are in our target group. Now, if we could just get 1% of this, imagine how much money we will make, right? Now, the problem is that 1% might be a very small number, but 1% of 10.5 million is a huge number. And this 1% is distributed across the whole country. So how on earth are you going to get them, right? So this percentage rule is a very
Recording
scary rule,
stopped.
and you need
Recording
to be
in
careful.
progress.
You need to be careful to get the audience, the investor, the judges, to understand that you really know who you're going after, and that you're just not using this random figures to validate your idea, right? So the more concrete your information, the more justifiable, the more reasoned out it is, the more powerful it will be. And when you're putting the market together, you're putting a market segment, we normally put it in 3 categories. So we will talk about our total addressable market. So this is anyone who can use your product, right? So for example, when I talked about that, the baby website, right? Anyone who has a child could use it. They would need something from us. Right? We could have something on that website for anybody who has a kid, right? So this could be, 5 million people. And let's assume that we have 5 million parents in Sri Lanka. 5 million people could need this product. But I can't go after all 5 million tomorrow, right? So I'll say, okay, I want to start with a smaller group. Right? I'm going to go after parents who have kids less than 5 years, right? That is our focus. Our product range, our marketing, all our initiatives are going to be targeted at parents who have kids below 5 years. So this is your serviceable market. This is an attainable group that you want to go after. But right now, you might not be able to go after this group. That's still too big. This might be maybe 3 million people or 2 million people, right? So now you want to show a little bit more focus. Who are the first customers that you want to get? Who are the first people that you want to win? And that is your share of market. So the share of market is your initial audience that you're going to go after. And usually this will be the people who need your product right now, right? Who are just waiting, who are suffering right now, and just want something that would solve, get rid of this headache for them. Right? So this, I would say, for the baby side would be, we are looking at first-time parents who are living alone and who have children under the age of 3. All my focus will be that. I will first capture that group of people. I will have a certain number of people of that category on my website buying my products before I move on to the next group, which will be 3 to 5 years. Right? So this is what you want to show an investor, a judge, that you know who your customers are, and that you have taken the time to understand this group a little bit more in detail. Right? This is a very important slide. So put some time into it. And if you can't find research or statistics right now, you can make assumptions, right? But it has to be reasonable assumptions. Right? So just work on this a little bit. And unfortunately, because of COVID, most of our statistics for the last 2 years have got thrown completely off center. But just have reasoning and have some rationale, because if an investor or a judge misunderstands or disagrees with your numbers, that could lose you the deal as well. Right? So this is a very important slide. So once you have your solution, right? So now we've talked about the problem. You're saying there are enough people who have this problem that need a solution, and here is our solution. Right? This is where you talk about what you're trying to do. how it's going to work, what is the concept, right? This is where you bring this in, right? You talk about your solution and how it will work and why it will work, right? Most importantly. So this slide, when you're preparing it, keep in mind, don't over-explain your solution, right? Don't go into all the nitty-gritties, this function, this database, that database. Don't worry about all that. Give a very high-level idea, because if an investor is interested, they will ask you questions, right? So keep it very high level. Focus on your value proposition, right? Focus on the real problem that you're solving. You might have a really cool feature, but it's a feature. It's not necessarily solving the problem, right? So don't talk about it, right? What is cool for you might not be relevant to the audience. And try to connect your problem, the solution, with the problems that you stated. So for example, if you take the bus route thing, right? If you say people are standing for 2 hours every day waiting for a bus, or every month waiting for a bus, you should say, with our solution, we can bring this down to 30 minutes, right? And this is how we are achieving it, right? So you want to show that connection between the problem that you said and the solution, how it's going to make that impact. And be very customer focused, right? Don't come and talk about, you know what, if you do this, Sri Lanka will be seen in the global stage as a great nation that has this cool technology. Yeah, so what? So it's all about your customer, right? So talk about the customer's point of view, how the customer is going to love this idea, how they are going to want it, and what they are saying, right? Bring that into the table. So this is your solution. So what you have come at this point is you said, we found a problem, we want to solve this problem, and this is how we are going to solve it. Now the next part of it is talking about what you're going to do in order to make the solution successful, right? So the first thing you need to talk about is the magic sauce. What is going to give you a competitive advantage, right? So what is it that's going to make you successful over anybody else and who are already out in the market? So these points are very powerful in order to get the content across, in order to make the investor see why you are special, right? And why you are different from the rest of the market. And that is what you want to showcase here. So here, what you want to talk about is, look at a competitive advantage. So a competitive advantage can be anything, right? It can be your algorithm, it can be your process, it could be the partnerships that you're building, it could be the network that you have, or it could be a combination of all these things, right? So try to find what your uniqueness is. And ideally, it should be something that is unduplicatable or should be very hard to duplicate, right? Because eventually somebody will figure it out and copy it, right? But you want to get as much mileage before they do that. So that is where we start, right? So try to think about it as something that anyone else can't copy, right? And understand why you are different from your competitors. So you shouldn't have something that says, we are different just because we are local, right? That's unique. That's for some particular industries, but not for everything, right? So try to see why you're different from the competitors, what they are doing differently, and what you're doing differently. And ideally, you should be doing more things than them. And know your numbers, right? Your magic sauce is only worth if you know your numbers. How much is going to cost you to find a customer? How much money do you need to spend every month? Whatever numbers. If you get a customer, how long will they be the customer? And how many payments can you get from them? These are useful numbers to have, mostly for your presentations that for a competition, they don't challenge you on this, but it's good as a startup to know these numbers. And just a small disclaimer here, right? Don't fall into the trap of saying that our competitive advantage is our price. Biggest mistake, right? Second thing is, don't say that your competitive advantage is your domain knowledge, right? If you're the only person in the world who has that knowledge, yes, then you can say it, right? But otherwise, you can't, because you might be the first person with that domain knowledge to have figured out a possible technology or a possible business startup idea that is going to make it successful, right? But the minute you start becoming successful, somebody else with 5 years, 10 years more experience is going to swoop in and take over your market, right? So domain knowledge and price should never be competitive advantages, right? Flat, right? No conditions, no negotiation. These two things are no-nos. So this is where we start. So this is you talk about your magic sauce, your competitive advantage. Then we jump into your revenue model, right? And your go-to-market. So revenue model talks about how are you going to earn money through your business. So what are your revenue streams? Are you going to be subscription based? Are you going to have packages? What are your packages? Are you going to be a cost plus? That means, whatever cost plus a 20% margin, 30% margin. Are you going to be a freemium model or a SaaS model or pay as you go or one time, whatever business model that you have, whatever revenue model that you want to follow, you can follow here. But you need to know what your revenue models are. And you need to understand how people are going to find that revenue model. So you could say, we are going to be a subscription-based service. You have a light subscription, regular subscription, and pro subscription. But how do people find out about it, right? Are we going to have something for teachers? Are we going to have something for students? Are we going to have something for parents, right? And as you build, you want to talk about how you're going to find each of these revenue streams, how you're going to get customers. And that is, through social media, through events, through PR, whatever, right? You can have a list of all the different channels that you want to use. And mind you, these are just plans, right? These might not always be things that you do actually, but you're just showing that you have a plan to make these revenue lines successful. And if you have traction, right? If you have customers already using your product, mention it, right? But if you don't, forget about it. So here are a couple of things you want to keep in mind. Keep it simple. Don't make it complicated, right? Don't have complicated formulas. Don't have complicated equations. Keep it very simple, and try to have multiple revenue streams, right? COVID has taught so many startups in Sri Lanka and around the world a painful lesson that if you have only one revenue stream, you're going to get into hot water when something happens and upsets that revenue stream, right? So many startups have been so reliant on just having one project by project revenues that when COVID hit, they didn't know what to do, right? So try to build multiple revenue streams, right? It could be through advertising, it could be through partnerships, through affiliate marketing, whatever, right? Different ways of getting money. And have very firm numbers. The more it shows confidence, right? Rather than saying we are having a package where the price will be between $5 and $10, decide, make a decision, say $10 or $5, whatever, right? Take that decision and put it on the screen. So once you do all of this, you've kind of talked about your business, you talked about how you're going to get the business to the market. Now we just want to touch on it from the technical side of things, right? So number one is your solution architecture, right? So solution architecture is not a complicated, like a blueprint of your business or your software. It's just a visual presentation of how the different modules in your business of your product work, right? So here, keep it simple, keep it very basic, right? Think about it, if you are at a 20,000 foot view looking down on your product, right? You will just see small details, right? You'll just see the big components. Those are the only things that are going to be visible. So put those on screen, right? So you'll have this module, that other module, but the smaller functions, the smaller connections, you don't need to highlight, right? And don't worry, you sometimes we want to be so honest that we put all the things that we have to say on the screen. And I'm not saying honesty is bad, but honesty sometimes can be confusing, right? So leave it out. And if it comes up, talk about it, right? And if they ask if there are any issues, be honest. Tell them these are the problems that we are facing. These are the issues that we are trying to solve. But you don't need to put that here, right? Clarity is very important. And keep away from the details, right? Don't get carried away with, how this module works or how this AI works or how this other ledger works or whatever. Don't get carried away with it. Keep it very straightforward, very direct, because that clarity will create confidence, right? if you can explain your idea to a person who has no clue what you are doing in a very simple way, wow, that shows that you're a really great business person, right? And that creates confidence. Also, you can talk about the technologies that you're using, right? So here again, keep it simple, 20,000 feet, no nuts and bolts. You don't care about all the different little programs or the modules and functions you have written. Just give us what are the high-level things that you're covering, what are the technologies that you're working on, right? So you could just make it to us very simple. This is a very simple layout for a website maybe, or a web portal, right? The interface level is HTML and CSS. Your business layer is this, whatever framework. Our data layer is, this is our database that we're using, and we're using web services and APIs or whatever, right? So you just want to give a very high level idea of what are the different technologies that you're using, just to show the investor that you are also technically competent, right? That we are not playing old, 10-year-old technology. We are using the latest, best, whatever, right? Whatever things that are relevant, they're using it. And if you're using old technology, that's okay, right? Just have a reason for it. Why are we using that today? Right? It might be better than the new ones, right? It's more stable. Whatever it is, just have a reason for it. Then we come to one of the most vital slides, right? Your team. So I told you, investors walk away from investments because sometimes they don't feel the team is right. So here, when you want to put this, don't get carried away. It's not about equal representation. There might have been a friend who did coding for you, another friend who did the UI, another friend who did the logo. That's okay, but they are not part of the core team. So put the core team members only, showcase what are the skills that they bring, and show what areas of the business that they are going to be focusing on, right? So here, when I'm designing this slide, when I'm putting the content on this slide, remember, this is not your CV, this is not their CV, this is not their LinkedIn profile. No one cares that they won a swimming meet in grade 5. So that doesn't matter. So try to keep your content very focused about the business, right? And then only include the core team, right? Because those are the people. The core team is going to be the people who are influencing the direction of the business. Right? These are the guys who are going to be working on where the business is going, looking at the business on a daily basis and trying to figure out the problems and work with the investor. An investor wants to know who they're going to be dealing with, right? If you have a team of 4 people, a co-founder, 4 co-founders, but only one person is going to be dealing with the investor, just put that person's name or highlight that person more than the other people, right? And have very clear designations and responsibilities. The reason I put this is, Sri Lankans are very nice people. We would have started a project at university, and now the team is that same team that our lecturer put us together, has come up with the idea. They are going to make it into a business. We're going to launch this business. Everything is on the track. But, there is one guy who's in that group, but who doesn't do anything, right? He might be a great guy, might be the nicest guy in the world, but for this business, he's not doing anything. Then you need to take a hard decision. As a founder, as a core team, you need to take a hard decision. Do we carry this dead weight? Investors don't want dead weight. Everyone should be pulling their weight. They need to be doing their part to make the business successful, right? So be careful of this. Whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, your best friend, if they're not bringing anything to the table, you need to take a hard decision, right? Next is your financials. So this generally for early stage startups would be estimates or guesstimates. So try to work out, okay, what are our targets? What are your targets? What are your possible revenues, right? What are your plans? And show an investor that you know what you're trying to achieve and you know what it's going to cost to achieve this. The numbers could be completely off, in reality. But having showing that you have put this effort shows that you're taking an extra effort to make your business successful, right? So do this, take some time and try something. If you have a friend who's good at accounts, try to get them to help you. But again, don't need to go into deep dive. So when you're doing this slide, you can work on assumptions on your revenue plans. You could say first year we will only get 100 customers. Second year we are expecting maybe 150. Third year 175, whatever, right? So you can just put some numbers on your assumptions, which you feel confident about being able to achieve. And keep it simple. This is if I am going to have 100 customers paying me 50,000 rupees or 500,000 rupees, I will have so much income. This is how much it's going to cost me. I have to have a team of 3 people. That's going to cost me so much for the year. I have to have this administrative cost, which is going to cost me X amount, and my profits are going to be this and this. Right? Very straightforward, very basic, right? Eventually, when you are getting some serious traction, you might have to hire a professional financial planner to do some forecasting for you, to do some work and give you accurate numbers. But for most competitions, for most pitches, a forecast or an estimated thing is adequate, right? More than the accuracy of the numbers, what's important is the reasoning and the rationale that you have followed in applying the numbers, right? It shows your business acumen, right? Also, when you can, try to highlight where your business is going to be cash flow positive, right? Very often, a lot of technology startups, first 2-3 years are going to be running on a loss because you're going to spend that time not selling but building, right? But then after that, you can't expect to be profitable on year one, right? When can you be profitable? When will you have more money in the bank than the money you have borrowed, right? So this is a simple thing, but try to figure out when you might have cash in the account. And also, so don't worry about the last point. That's not relevant for most of you all. So financials are a very powerful thing that you all need to include in your presentations, right? If you all can do it, great. But if you all can't, there's no harm, right? At least have some numbers, some basic numbers of what at least for customer acquisition, how many customers you're trying to acquire every month, and what kind of packages that they're going to buy, or how much they're going to pay you on average. At least have that, right? So that it gives you some idea of the vision for the growth of the business. Finally, you will have something called the use of funds and the progress, right? So this is a slide where you say, we are trying to raise X amount of money, and we are going to use that money, and we are going to spend it on these things, right? So this is usually the final slide, and this is a money slide, right? This is where you make your ask. Right? So this slide, you need to also have a little bit of thought about what you're asking for. So where you spend your money, you have to also be very smart, right? Try to select places where you're spending the money that's going to generate more business, that's going to grow the business, that's going to get you more customers, right? Spending money on a trip to Malaysia, or spending money to take your team for a trip to Singapore might not be worth it, right? If you have to do it, there has to be a rationale for it. There has to be a reason that's going to help the business grow. Right? So make sure that you're putting the money in places where it's going to generate more business. Quantify the growth, right? Rather than simply saying, with this money, we are going to be able to achieve 20% increase in our sales revenue. We are going to be able to bring on board at least 50 new customers, right? We are going to be able to have a revenue. We are going to be able to cut our production time by 3 months, right? Whatever. Try to quantify your achievements, right? And sometimes you have to be careful, right? Especially when it comes to competitions where there's a fixed amount of money that they're going to be giving you. Think about that money and what you will do with that money, right? So even though you might need 2 million or 3 million rupees in order to get your business ready for the big market, but this competition is only going to give you 1 million. I'm not saying that they are, I'm just saying an example. If they're giving you only 1 million, talk about that 1 million. With this 1 million, we are going to do a market test. We are going to launch our website. We are going to get a wait list created for our product, and we're going to build these 3 features of our product, right? Whatever. Put that, just focus on this, rather than saying, okay, you know what, I need 4 million to get the business off the ground, but your 1 million will help me get there. So remember, I said, right, investors and judges are going to be looking at the most investable business, the business where their money, their support is going to be able to create a difference that's going to make go to market faster, right? They're going to get customers faster. So it's important that you focus on that funding only rather than everything that you need. And finally, try to showcase your business growth, right? How many new employees you're going to bring on board, how many new customers you're going to get, how many new markets you're going to get into, whatever it is, try to showcase that, right? Because that is where you show that this money is going to be used smartly and effectively. Those two things have to come across to an investor. So I hope all of these 10 slides that we looked at today, you would have realized now that we've taken an idea, a problem, and we've made it into a successful business, right? So this is just the journey of your business, right? This is what we're trying to showcase. You might still be at, the small kid there, but you have to be thinking about where you want to go. That needs to come across in your pitch. So this is basically the content of your presentation. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about is your delivery. You could have a great presentation, you could have a great idea, you could have all of that. But at the end of the day, the people who are listening to you are human beings. We have our biases, we have our prejudices, right? We come in with it, we make assumptions. And when we deliver, when we talk and we don't come across confidently and effectively, it creates doubt in the minds of the audience. And when there is doubt, there is no money, right? So you need to also prepare for your delivery. So a few things that I want you to just keep in mind. Number one is, don't worry about your slides looking pretty. Make sure that your slides are clear and they're easy to understand. Pretty slides are a bonus, right? But you can have a bad idea with pretty slides or a great idea, just okay slides. The second one is better. So try to make sure that you have a good, clear slide deck with you. Wherever possible, try to visualize your content, right? Rather than putting big blocks of text on your slide, if you can explain your process with images, do it. Create a simple infographic. You can create a simple graphic that represents that explains what you're trying to say, right? Wherever you can, don't put big blocks of text, because an investor is not there to read your slides. They are there to listen to you, to be convinced by you, right? So try to visualize as much as possible. Also understand your timing, right? So depending on the competition, the organizers will tell you how much time that you have. Right? They might tell you that you have 5 minutes to make a video presentation or to make a pitch in person, and then there's a 10-minute panel discussion, right? Whatever that is, understand what the timing is, be very clear about it, because that's important. And you need to also understand that time that you're given, you need to learn how to utilize it effectively, right? So just think of it like this, right? You have 10 slides, so that are going to be 10 baskets or 10 buckets, and you have a bag of rice. Now each grain of rice is equal to 1 word, and if you have, say, 5 minutes to make a presentation, that basically comes to about 600 grains of rice. The question is, how do you divide this 600 grains of rice across all the 10 baskets? Now, a common mistake that happens in a lot of startups is we spend a lot of time in the first few slides. The problem, the solution, the magic sauce, we put all our time there, and then we realize, oh my God, 3 minutes or 4 minutes are over. Now we have to rush through the remaining, right? The second part of your presentation is the magic part. That's where the money is made. That's where your business growth is talked about. That is where you're talking about why we will be successful. How can you rush through that, right? So make sure that you have to be smart about where you put your time. And one technique that we have recommended to a lot of startups, and we have heard startups come back to us and say this was super useful, is to plan your script, right? You know your 10 slides that you need to cover, 10 or 9 or 8 or whatever number of slides that you have to cover. You know the number of words that you have, right? So for a 5-minute presentation, you have 600 words. So roughly, if it's 10 slides, you have about 60 words per slide. However, every slide will not take you 60 words. Your cover slide, you can probably do it inside 20 words. Now you have a remaining 40 words. You can reallocate that into another section. Put it wherever you like, right? But decide where you think you need more time to explain. So as you go, at the end of, once you write the script for your entire presentation, you have to be inside 600 words. And for something like this, I would highly recommend write your script word for word. You might know your business inside out. You might know your technology inside out. Doesn't matter. Write your script word for word, because sometimes when we know something so well, we tend to over explain, right? And we focus on the wrong thing. So writing your scripts ensures that you focus on the right thing, ensures that you get your content across clearly. And then you come to the 3 letters. These 3 letters are the magic letters for a great pitch, right? Remember them, right? First P is for prepare. Prepare your script. Write it word for word. What am I going to say? Prepare your script. Second P is practice. Practice the script over and over again. If it's a 5-minute script, it should only take you 5 minutes to practice. Morning, afternoon, night, 5 minutes. Practice your script. Once you are confident, once you know that the script is in your head and in your heart, put the script away and then start rehearsing, right? Get in front of a camera, get in front of your mirror and deliver the entire pitch, right? Go over and over again. Each time you rehearse, it will be slightly different. One word here, one word there will change. That's okay, right? But try to go through the pitch from beginning, from the first slide till the last slide. That rehearsal makes a huge difference, right? Because it shows that you care. That attention to detail helps you get your content across to the audience clearly. And finally, we are in the world of COVID. Sometimes we'll have to make our presentations virtually, right? So if you're doing that, that also needs planning, right? Because if you're going to be successful, you need to pay attention to these details. So number one, do the recording, or if you're doing it, it's going to be a Zoom call. Make sure that you get a place with good lighting, right? Where there is a lot of natural light, if possible. If you're doing it in the morning, natural light, or a good light where your face is very visible. Try to find a place without much distracting backgrounds, right? You don't want somebody walking in the back or somebody playing around in the back. That's going to disturb you. Speak clearly and with passion, right? That your confidence has to come across to the audience, even through a camera. Use a microphone, right? Your slides are only going to be a supporting thing. Your words are what matters. And finally, speak to the camera. So you'll notice when I speak to the camera versus when I'm looking at the slides and I'm speaking, there's a difference, right? So speak to the camera, get used to it. It takes a bit of effort. Get used to it and make sure that you're getting that connection with the audience. So that brings me to the end of today's presentation. So just to quickly wrap up, just to recap what we talked today. So when you're preparing your presentation, always remember to look at it through the lens of your investor, right? Lens of risk is about creating confidence in your investor about your startup. That is your goal. Second, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about making them feel good about you, right? It's not about showing off how smart you are, how great your idea is. It's about telling them, we can help you. Use your money to do something great, right? Show you have a plan for success. Your revenue models, your go-to-market strategy, your understanding of your competitors, understanding of your audiences, all of those things show how you plan to be successful. Create curiosity, right? Don't give away everything on the very first slide. Build it up, get them excited. What's going to happen next? How are they going to be doing? How are they going to do this? How are they going to find customers? Create that curiosity. Know your numbers. Whatever numbers you can know, make sure that you know them well and plan what you're doing. Nothing should be off the cuff. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Right? So that's the last thing. So just as a small bonus to all of y'all, last year, me and my team, we got together, we looked at all the 25 plus presentations, pitches that we did, and we analyzed them, and we basically created a 20-page workbook that is available on our website for free. Anyone can go and download it. And it's a fillable workbook that basically helps you create most of the content that you need for your pitch. It asks you the questions that you need to answer to create your pitch. So if you want this, please go in to our website, showandtell.gurus/startup. You can just put your email address down and you can sign up. You can just download the PDF. It's a little big, so it's about 50 MBs, but just you can download it and use it as a team to get your content ready. Also, just follow us on social media because we are going to start a series of workshops where we are going to work with the startups who download our book and fill it out. And together, we are going to make sure that your content is getting really refined and going to become really powerful, right? So this is something that we are also planning to start from September. So if you all want, you can sign up for this workshop and follow us on social media to know when these events are going to happen, right? So those events will be a paid event. So just, but we're trying to make it as reasonable as possible and online for the moment at least. So just keep an eye out for it. So thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure speaking to all of y'all. I wish it was in person, but I hope even online that we are able to use this knowledge. And if you all have any questions, if you want to ask me anything, pick my brain, you can always reach out to me. My email and phone number are on the screen. So you can just drop me a call, drop me a WhatsApp message, or drop me an email. And time permitting, I will always be available to help you guys out. Right? So thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And with that, I'll hand over controls back to Uvini to take over and run the Q&A session. Uvini, over to you.
Dear sir, thank you very much for sharing your valuable time with us. And thank you very much for your insight as well. All of us youngsters starting out in the really appreciate your guidance. Before we move on with the Q&A session, there will be a link to consider your participation. Please make sure that you fill that as well. And we will now be starting the Q&A session. So the first question here is, in what extent an investor is involved in our business for decision-making and controlling our business?
Okay. So that is a good question. It's a tough question also to answer. It comes down to your arrangement with the investor, right? So if you're a very early stage startup, if you're going for early funding, generally you'll go for like angel investors or investors who don't mind investing in early stage startups. And generally those investors want a lot of control, right? They will want to be somewhat involved in the business. They will want regular reports. They will want to at least be able to sign a check, be a co-signatory on a checks, right? And this is not because they don't trust you. This is not because it's not necessarily a bad thing. It does actually help in a lot of ways because it brings a lot of discipline to the startups, right? It forces you to be honest. It forces you to report accurately back to the investors, and that reporting back helps you also realize where your business is doing well and where your business is struggling, right? So it changes. There will be investors who will just give you the money and they'll just want their payment back in a few years, or they might just come for a meeting every 6 months. So those are investors who are just looking for a return on investment. Then you have investors who really want to be involved. And for early stage startups, I think it's important to have investors who are going to be involved and supporting you because they are going to be valuable assets as well. So I hope I answered that question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And moving on to the next question. It is asking, what is the difference between funding and investing?
Okay, it's not much of a difference. So if you say investing, investing is generally from a point of view of a return on investment, right? So that means if I'm an investor and you have a startup, you come and tell me, this is my startup, here's my pitch, here's my market, here's my revenue, all of that, right? Great, I'm excited. I give you 10 million rupees or 20 million rupees or 50 million rupees, whatever, right? That is my investment to you. But I am giving that to you with the expectation that you will give it back to me someday, maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, or that I will be able to sell my shares in your company somewhere down the road and make, if I've given you 50 million, I want to be able to make 250 million or 500 million back, right? So investing generally has this mindset of return on investment. Funding, on the other hand, very often, most like 90% of the time, funding will is another word we use for investing. But sometimes you have situations where you could get into a program, a hackathon or another program where they give you money, right, to build your business, right? These are usually small amounts, 250,000, 500,000, 1.5 million. They don't expect equity. They don't want a share of a company usually, or they don't want the money back. That is where they're funding you. They're just backing you without any expectation. They just want you to be successful, right? So that's the difference, I would say. But 90% of the time in the industry, we use the words interchangeably.
Okay, sir. So moving on to the next question. What is the exact role of an investor? Will an investor be a mentor or a controller in the business?
It comes down to a few things, right? So there are some investors who will come on board wanting to invest a big portion of the company and say, no, we want 50% of the company or 51%, because they think that they can bring a lot of value to the business. So these are so don't let this get. So they are they are a controlling party, right? They become equal partners, and then you have investors who just come in, maybe 20%, 15%, 25%, who just want to be there to support you, right? As mentors, they are there to go and bounce ideas off, to strategize with. So all of these things are not written in stone, right? So what you want to do is, when you're going for funding, have a discussion with the investor, right? Investors are also human beings. They make mistakes. They run on emotion, right? So don't, just because they're successful and have money doesn't mean that they are some kind of super beings or like gods or demigods, right? They're just human beings, right? So just have a conversation with them. Tell them, I'm not just looking for money. I want somebody who can open doors for me, who can work with my sales team, who can give technical guidance, right? Discuss those things, find out what they can bring to the table, right? And more importantly, know what you need from them, right? That is, I think, much more important than what they bring to the table. But don't get too carried away. Sometimes we think of investors and we think, these guys are like, untouchable people. They drive their Mercedes Benz and BMWs and Porsches, and we are like ants next to them. But they are human beings, right? They're just people.
So interesting answer. And moving on to the next question. Normally, how do the investors negotiate with the equity?
Okay. So generally, it is based on valuation, right? So both of you all need to agree on a valuation for the business, and the valuation for the business is effectively how much money do you think the business is going to be worth down the road. And there are few models and few scenarios of how you calculate valuation, which even I don't try to understand it. I leave it for my finance people. But generally, the percentage is decided based on that. But one thing that I would say as a startup, right, as a founder, you need to decide how much you're willing to give up. Because at some point, when you give up a certain amount of your business, at some point, you shouldn't feel like, why am I doing like. So I know startups, right? They have raised multiple rounds of funding. The founding team has got diluted. so much that now, they were 100% shareholders and now they are 5% shareholders, which is still it's still worth something. It's worth a lot of money because the business is very successful, but somebody else owns 95% of their business. And that is okay. That's not a problem at all. But as an investor, as a founder, you need to understand at what point are you going to feel like, you know what, I'm working for somebody. Like I'm not getting the job satisfaction. I'm doing all the hard work and somebody else is reaping all the rewards, right? So it's important to understand where you draw the line, and that's an individual, personal conversation you need to have with yourself.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is regarding the logos for the business. Here it's asking, when considering a logo of a company, how should it be? Is it good to have a name as a logo or an image as a logo? Among the above mentioned, which is more good to attract customers?
Okay, so branding is not like a huge area of my speciality, but I am from marketing, so I should have an answer for this. So let me say this, right? When you start off as a startup, people don't know who you are. They don't know anything about you. So you just being an icon, just being a logo might not mean a lot, right? Remember now, today we all know the famous F of Facebook, right? We see that blue box with the F in it and we know it's Facebook, right? But for the longest time, when Facebook started, they were the entire word Facebook, right? So my suggestion is, if you're a startup, start with a word mark. So that's where you have a name rather than just a logo, because initially people won't know who you are. Once you have, 1 million customers, then you can change your logo and just come to having just an icon. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
So the next question is, if we have several project ideas, do we have to create 3 separate decks? Can we use one?
Yes. If you have 3 different ideas, unless you're selling the business, which is building ideas, you need to have 3 decks. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So let's move to the next question. Here he's asking, my startup is a consultant and advising service where I use creativity and innovative thinking for coming up with solutions. Is it necessary to show all these slides during a pitch? Do I need to repeat the question, sir?
No, I think that's not necessary, Vinay. So here's the situation, right? Service pitches are different from product or technology pitches. So what we talked about today are mostly for technology companies. The slides like the solution architecture, the technologies used, some of the revenue, I think those are the only 2 slides that you don't need to have, but you have to replace it with other slides, right? Like what your process is, how is your process scalable? The questions that investors have about service startups are slightly different to a product startup, right? And the fact is, a service startup is always a little bit more like, I had the same problem, right? My company Schwantel is a service business, right? I can design pitch decks for others, but designing a pitch deck for my own company is going to be very, very challenging, right? So it's you won't have everything, but you need to have certain extra slides that talk about your process, talk about how you have standardized your process, and how you can scale your process.
Okay, sir. So there's a request to a little bit summarize the solution architecture slide.
Okay. So the solution architecture slide is, I would say, think of it like a Lego building block, right? So you have, when you're building a business or building an idea, you're going to have a lot of little pieces coming together and making the big picture, right? So your product will have let's say you're having a product like a website. Okay, let's say it's a website, e-commerce store, right? So you will not, so you'll have like, you can draw a small box and say, this is our product. The e-commerce store is our product. And you'll have all the different modules that you should have in order for the site to work, right? So you'll have product management, customer management, inventory management, order management, maybe, notification management, right? Order tracking, right? So whatever, you just put like this big categories, right? And then you'll have that will be connected to a web-based HTML interface and also a mobile application, right? Below that, you have a database, right? That's going to hold all the data. So you just look at it like a building block, right? And all these are little petties that you have, which are the key modules that your product is going to include. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, sir. And let's move to the next question. Here it is asking, my startup lacks data to build, which I currently don't possess. Can funding help me to collect data? Is it a part of the business model?
So it's not part of the business model because your data collection is part of your business. It's something that you need, right? And so you can get funding for your business. So you need to showcase that once you have. So when you're creating your pitch deck in that scenario, focus on what you would do once you have the data, right? So once you have the data, what are you going to do? How are you going to market it? How are you going to get revenue? How are you going to find customers, right? You focus on all of that. In the meantime, what you do is you need to still, you showcase all of this and you showcase the potential the business has. And then you tell the investor, in order to achieve this potential, we need to do 2 years of data collection, or we need to do 1 year of data collection, right? I was talking to a startup recently, and they have a great idea, but in order for the idea to be validated, they need to do a field test, and that field test needs about 1 or 2 million rupees, right? So they have to first, their funding is conditional. Say, okay, we have to do the field test, and then we need the rest of the money to grow the business, right? But you can get funding in order to do your data collection part. But when you're creating your pitch, you need to focus. You need to imagine that you have the data, right? You can't make a pitch for funding in order to get the data only, because that's not going to get any money, right? How does the investor make money off that, right? So that's my recommendation there.
Thank you so much, sir. So, and that marks the end of our Q&A session. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Mafaz, for sharing your valuable time and wisdom with us. It's indeed our pleasure to have you this evening. And I'm pretty sure everyone had an interesting and insightful session. We have prepared a small token of appreciation for you, sir. We hope you accept it.
Thank you, Winnie. It was my pleasure.
You're mostly welcome, sir. And now we would like to take a snapshot with all our amazing participants to commemorate this event. I would like to request everyone present today to please switch on your cameras to pose for a photo.
All right, everyone. So there are more than 160 participants. So still I can see around 40 to 50. Yeah, still coming. Come on. Still less than 50, I think. Yeah, more coming. Quickly. Yes. Come on, guys. 164, but less than 50. Turn on their cameras. Come on. Okay. Can see around 50. Yeah. Now 50 plus. Okay, then. Shall I count like 3 to 1? Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and smile. Just hold a second. I have to capture 2 pages. Yes, done. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Uni.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And as in any event, there are always those that require thanks and recognition for everything they did for making this event a success. For that, with great pleasure, I invite the Secretary of IEEE Innovation Nation Sri Lanka, Ms. Nuanthi Abegunawardena, to address the gathering. Ms. Nuanthi, over to you.
Thank you, Winnie. Good evening to all of you. It's such an honor for me to have this opportunity to present the vote of thanks on behalf of Innovation Nation Sri Lanka 2021. Our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Mafasifa, who's an entrepreneur, marketer, and Toastmaster, and also the co-founder and chief storyteller at Show and Tell Private Limited. We are very much grateful to you, sir, for sharing your knowledge on how to create a pitch deck and pitch. We believe our audience was able to grab a lot from your session today. Mr. Dhammika Marasinghe, Chairperson of Student Activities Committee, IEEE Sri Lanka Section, Ms. Lihini Rajapaksha, Sectional Student Representative. Thank you very much, both of you, for your constant support and guidance, and also for being present here with us today despite our busy schedules. To all the team leads and members, thank you for joining with us today. And finally, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our organizing committee and our university representatives for the massive support they gave us throughout the time. So once again, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you, and hoping to see you tomorrow in our final session of Road to INSL program. Thank you very much. Over to you, Winnie.
Thank you, Ms. Nuanthi. And with that, it brings today's workshop to an end. A quick reminder, tomorrow's workshop is really important as you will be guided on filling the application. So do not let yourself miss that opportunity. And thank you and best of luck to everyone who will be competing in INSL 2021. I bid you all good night and stay safe.
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, sir.